Hi, this is Growing Up Aspen with Andy Collin and Chris Pomeroy. We're starting season two. Where are they now? With a bunch of our friends that we grew up with to give you a real idea of the effect Aspen had on some of us kids. What did we get and where did we go? So here we are with Ben Ball. Thanks. Let's start with something easy and let's start with what were some of your first jobs that you can remember having in Aspen as a kid growing up? Because we worked at 12, and a lot of people it's been like a long time since I've seen a 12-year-old working at a movie theater.
Yeah. That usually doesn't work for most state labor relations boards. Too many people abused that practice, and you don't want to be in grapes of wrath situation. I mean, I can't say. Yeah, something like that, So, I didn't come to Aspen until I was 16, right? So. Right. But I had jobs when I was a kid in Iowa.
Well, now wait, I met you long before you were 16, man.
You did?
You yeah, when we were babies, I think.
Because our parents,
Benji.
Yeah, that's because that's true. That's because our parents were friends, and they'd known each other since the time I was born. So I met you and Jim about the time I first started coming to Aspen when I was, a toddler. So I have pictures of all of us.
Do you really?
Yeah, they're around. My mother just has been combing her archives, and there is a mother lode of of images that I have a feeling are going to touch every corner of my life. So I'll let you know if I find any.
I'd love to see
you
that.
Are right. We knew each other then. You were the first two kids that I knew. I didn't move to Aspen, as I said, until I was 16. And my first job, though, when I got there, I presume that's what you're asking, Andy. Yeah. What was my first job? My first job was at Clark's Market.
Me too. Bagger. I think maybe I was a bagger with you, maybe.
You were a bagger? Yeah. No, I don't. You might have bagged with me. You might have. But Jim, your brother, Chris, he worked with me as well.
I remember, yeah.
And it was, I have some pretty keen memories of that time. Not keen in the sense that they're positive, but keenly specific, about some of the characters that would work there and some of the people that would come through. It was really like being in the middle of the stream that is the flow of human beings that pass through Aspen.
Yeah.
You had everything from, ski bums, everybody needs food. There wasn't a hell of a lot of, shopping opportunities food-wise in Aspen at that time. You might have had City Market and you had Clark's. And so you got everybody coming through there. Rich, poor, ski bums, hippies, what we would now call billionaires, power brokers from around town, drug addicts. I mean, I have specific stories. I mean, I could tell you
let's hear one.
Yeah. Okay. They're not going to be any particular structure to all of these, but because there's several, but there's this, I learned something about the whole town when I was working as the bagger for a woman who was a checker, right? That's what they call them, I guess, checker. Yep. And I really liked that job because, around Christmas time,
right? Yeah.
Thanksgiving, holidays, I would get tipped, man, and I'd get like a $50 tip sometimes. I was like, holy shit, $20. It's like you get $20, $10. I was probably getting $5 an hour. So, $20 is 4 hours of work in just one transaction.
New Year's. New Year's.
Yeah.
For sure.
Miss Pepke always gives me a $10 bill.
Yeah. So somebody from Hollywood or somebody from New York. And, but, going back to the, this checker, I don't know why I always think of this story, but, inevitably you're working with people and you're talking about skiing, and everybody to me when I was that age looked old. I thought that, I had no idea how old this woman, if she was 25 years old, that was, like
ancient.
Yeah. So, but I remember talking to her and asking her about skiing, and I was telling, where do you like to ski? Oh, I like Ajax. And where do you like to ski? And I said, I really love Highlands. I ski at Highlands as much as possible. It's cheaper. It's got some great steep stuff. And she just glibly says, oh, there's just not a very sophisticated group of skiers over there. I'm like, oh my God, lady. I was like, no, I don't want to like pull any kind of like class designation here, but you're working as a checker in Clark's Market. So it's like there was this sort of pervasive snobbery that ran across the entire town, which is at least what I was sensitive to, because I was coming from Iowa, and if you know anything about Iowa, it's just like at that time, I mean, it's a very different culture, without getting too into it. I mean, Aspen looked downright, cosmopolitan and sophisticated. So she was just trying to get into the sophisticated game, and to say that, kind of poo-poo something in Aspen.
Isn't that funny? I mean, I've seen that too with them. I remember specifically with a lot of the billionaires, and people would always, they had this mistaken assumption that if they were near someone successful or wealthy, that somehow that would rub off, or they'd be discovered, like, oh, what are you doing working at Clark's Market? You should come work. You should be my assistant in New York City.
Right.
It's just like, I encountered that years later in actually I needed to buy a bag for a trip on a flying somewhere. And I went into this place, and I always call this kid the bag Nazi. It just reminds me exactly what you're saying. And I said, where do you have carry-on? I just need to get one carry-on bag. And he kind of snickered. He's like, well, how much are you looking to spend? And I said, I don't know, man. Anything under $100, And he's like, you might try Kmart. I'm looking at this kid like, dude, you're pulling down maybe $10 an hour. What?
Yeah, that was in Aspen. That was in Aspen.
No, this was actually in Fort Collins, of all places. Loveland or something. But yeah, it's just that kind of weird snobbery that sycophant is just so strange.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I mean, I noticed a lot of sycophancy in the town, having been something of an outsider. And my dad was very sensitive to that, probably because, he considered himself a local, but he was not, he wasn't, say, like, Jim Pomeroy, right? Like, he wasn't like your parents. Yeah. What?
Not like Elks Club kind of local.
Right.
I don't know, man. Right. He had some sway for sure. Is that
After you've
I
been there for a
remember.
long
People
time.
always looked up to your dad. So.
My parents weren't Elks Club locals either. I mean, if they wanted to help out with the music tent, they'd like donate some room to some musicians coming into town or writers or whatever. And so they get involved like that, but it wasn't like, the regular picnic. They were out making calls and getting people and lining stuff up. The local moms were really involved with stuff like that, like Missy's mom, Dee Dee.
Well, yeah, I mean, you seem like you were on you were part of the wave of bohemians who lived there. Moved. I don't know when your parents come there, Andy.
We left LA in '77. My dad's law firm settled something, and my dad was kind of like, I want to change my life, and we literally just totally changed everything. So we were kind of one of those locals that just dropped everything and just came. We got a Blazer for the first time with our moving truck going in to Glen. So we just like did what everybody around us was doing. So we came in not with the intent of bringing LA to Aspen. We came in with saying goodbye LA. Hello Aspen.
Yeah. That was my dad too. He didn't want to bring Iowa. I mean, given the choice for me, I'll take some of LA anywhere. I mean, I think it's a great city with a lot going on. So I'm not like in a position where I want to like up and leave it behind. My dad wanted to up and leave behind Iowa. To him it represented it's where he came from, but he had been in love with Colorado. He'd been in love with Roaring Fork Valley since he was in his early 30s, and he was learning to ski and coming out there with his friends for ski vacations. And my parents honeymooned there, and he loved it. So he saw it before it became overrun with exorbitant wealth, and he bought property there before it became overrun with exorbitant wealth. And so he was always to go back to the topic of kind of the sort of sycophancy and snobbery. He was really sensitive to that stuff and didn't really appreciate it. He was probably a little afraid that I might get sucked into some of that. But for the most part, as we know, Aspen High School wasn't full of kids like that so much. Yeah. It was really the middle class, the lower middle class, and really. Well,
that's something that I brought up with the Marolts, which is really interesting, because when we were kids and we went to high school, I would say 80% of the kids had lived in homes around town, all over. Now 80% of the kids live in employee housing, which is a totally different environment, and it's a totally different approach. I mean, it's not the projects like in some cities, but it's still in Aspen sense it is.
It depends on what type of housing they have. Like my brother's in a house. I mean, they have a house. It's employee housing, but it's
Well, what I'm getting at is that they lived in regular homes that now are millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, just the average houses, like whatever. I mean, the simple 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom house, Victorian house in Aspen that had probably had a couple of generations of ski bums living in it in the late 70s, early 80s. It would have become a real expensive piece of real estate.
Right.
And none of those are there anymore. I've driven, I drive around town, like in the grid, looking around for like friends' houses. I'm like, where's that house that Mark Whitley used to live in? I'm like,
yeah. Or Will Bennis's old house. Yeah.
Where's Will Bennis's old house? Or is your house there, Andy?
No, it's torn down and there's a whole new huge thing there. They did a good job with the new house, but it's like a big it's a big house, you know.
Yeah, ours are both gone. The one we had on North Street, that was 4th and North, was I think they changed that almost immediately after my parents sold it, built a mansion out of it, and then the one on Eastwood, that one that sold just a few years ago for like $2.5 million, and they bulldozed it, just to build something new.
It's at the point. It's really now at the point where if it's not worth $20 million, it's a teardown. Which,
right. Yeah, totally.
That's a whole nother ecosystem.
Yeah. My dad tore his own house down in like the late 90s. He bought a house that was probably built by Meg Kaczynski, and I were discussing this recently. We suspect that I'm pretty sure her dad built that house, and it was just the worst architecturally you could. Remember that house, the Pizza Hut house that I had? My dad had. It was just a terrible house because it had no privacy. It had this, like, the master bedroom was up in this little, like, widow's peak, that widow's watch that was on top of a flat roof house, which is problematic in and of itself. Flat roofs, 10 feet of snow. But this little kind of pop-up bedroom with a spiral staircase, cast iron spiral staircase.
I remember that. Yeah.
Meg's dad had probably salvaged from some other 19th century Victorian house and plopped in there, but there was no door. Okay, so what does that mean? There's no door to the master bedroom. You enter the master bedroom from the living room, this sunken living room. So if I wanted to watch it. It was totally, it's totally unworkable for a kid though. Like, if I wanted to have somebody over, I wanted to get busy with some girl, if we wanted to do drugs, if I even wanted to watch a movie or listen to music, it just didn't work. And even the bedrooms were not sufficiently sealed. So I was always sneaking out, and I don't know how I did that, but I was like, well, hell with this. I'm going to go over to, like, Will Bennis's house, with Andy.
I know. I remember hanging out with you a bunch and places and all that kind of stuff.
They need to bring back the sunken living rooms, though, man. The only time you ever see those are in, like, Quentin Tarantino movies or something.
Yeah.
It's like... Totally. Yeah, that's what we had. We had the sunken living room, and it was comfortable. It would have been a great place for, like, one styling person or couple, as a party house. But it was maybe not even a party house because there was no rooms you could really have privacy in. But Meg's dad built it. He's definitely not an architect. Like, whoa. Anyway, but houses, my dad tore that one down. He built this, kind of, I don't know, chateau type house that, which was kind of in vogue with the local architects at the time. It's managed to survive since the late 90s. So, it's not worth $20 million, that's for sure. But it's probably worth a hell of a lot more than my dad paid in 1979 when he bought his house.
Yeah.
But,
so what? Tell us a little bit about how you ended up in LA, and what do you do, and what have you been doing since you graduated Aspen High School?
Maybe start with your journey to where you are.
I was going to tell a story about. I was also going to tell a story about working with your brother at Clark's Market. And
let's hear it.
But we can save this for another.
Out with it, son.
We could save this for another. We could save this for another session.
No. Tell us the story. Tell us the story.
Yeah.
We love Jim stories.
Jimmy. He and I used to work with this guy named Peter. Who was a ski bum, and he was a coke dealer, and I guess he probably just used bagging or facing groceries as a kind of way to stabilize his topsy-turvy income. But that guy, he was a really good skier, and I skied with him. Jim and I both skied with him, and he's a really good skier, and I played tennis with him. He's just like one of these guys. He was probably like 28, 29 years old, but he was just always talking about like how he's going out and getting laid, and like he'd be like, he would like ask us like really sexually provocative questions to make us sort of uncomfortable and to highlight, you know, how young we were. But I will say, I knew he was a drug dealer, but he never ever put it in front of us, and he never ever talked about it. But I knew he was. There were all these shifty moves that he was performing out of Clark's Market, and then also like when we went skiing with him, I remember like him bumping into people, and, you know, like them disappearing for 10 minutes, and you know, he wouldn't tell me exactly what had happened. He's a weird guy. He was definitely like ski bump party scene Aspen, but he was kind of gross. He was like one of these people who had, like, he had white stuff around his lips. I remember that really, really well. I'd be like, ugh, gross, dude. Brush your teeth. His name was Peter. And your brother was like exploring an identity as a punk rocker at the time, Chris. And I just remember your brother wearing these like fuck the world denim jackets or something to work at Clark's Market. And I was a little bit like, I loved punk rock, but I never felt like Aspen was a place that was a very a good
scene,
place to.
Yeah,
no. It's definitely not a place.
Scene.
There was no scene. There was nothing to. There was a lot to rebel against, but I felt like you'd be kind of like. You know, screaming at the top of your lungs in the woods, you know, with nobody around who could be receptive to the rebellious message.
No future.
Thanks for listening. The authors of Growing Up Aspen would like to thank you, and would like to also thank the Aspen Times and the Aspen Daily News for giving us materials for our book, Growing Up Aspen, Adventures of the Unsupervised, which you can get at twistandturnpress.com and any local bookstore. Thanks.